Can we have everyone return to your seats so we can start the next segment, the Pulse of the Region? We're very excited to unveil the results from the BizFed Pulse Poll. Thank you so much.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Hernandez, your founding CEO here at BizFed. And, oh, thanks. It's a good day so far. You know, when we started brainstorming this crazy idea to do this, who knew the little path that we would be on, you know, when just getting to today, throwing out the idea of first 100 days has been fascinating on the passion and the emotion and the personal connectivity to this subject, you know, that it affects everyone. And little side story, we even had a different location planned as we started planning it, and you may or may not have heard, but there was a huge protest all of a sudden that we rallied up, so we had to regroup from that location to a different location. We adjusted our title and everything, so here we are, just a little BizFed Institute. All we do is bring smart people together. All we do is say, you know, no, we don't have any preconceived notions. Let's hear from everyone. Let's let smart people go away with more informed and do important things. That's all we're about. And so, you know, and even today, you've seen some media in the room and other media. So anyway, I'm breathing a sigh of relief now that we're in the middle and that we're here and we're all okay. And and we had some speakers. I was proud of our elected officials for being open with us. I felt that we really heard from them. And Alec, where's Alec? Is he still in the room somewhere? Maybe he it was so funny. Friend said, Alec looks like he's 11 or 12 years old, you know, and he's so amazing, you know, and so it was, you know, great Yale graduate, and the way he just got us focused and just put it up, no frills, no crazy talk, just what's happening. So now we get to segue, because that's really what BizFed Institute's all about, right? We like the best and the brightest and those that are doers, and then we figure if we collect you and let you talk to one another and inform and engage, that together we do smarter things, all for a healthy economy. When our economy's humming, everything we care about in the community is working better, right? And all of our people, our families, our employees, and so on thrive. So I have to take you back just a second to short 9 years ago, BizFed, was just a twinkle in David Fleming's eye. And a few brave souls in the room, many of you actually said when he threw out the idea, what if we got all the business groups together and got them organized and on occasion shared fast-moving intel where it affected public policy at every level of government. And then what if, on occasion, we agreed to, I was complimenting you, Alec, but you missed it, so you have to listen to the video later on, you know, get it. And then, what if then when there was something to do about it, we could amass large-scale, relentless numbers so that the lawmakers and the opinion leaders might listen a bit more to our contribution as employers and job creators, and we'd end up with a better balanced public policy. So before we even got started, so in 2007, we spent time gathering those that were brave and that said maybe it can be done, even though we naturally compete with each other. We have 162 of the top chambers of commerce, industry trade associations, business improvement districts, minority business associations, the best, the top. Each and every one of those 162 has major brand and impact and cachet and membership, and we said, so to get them all to agree to play together on occasion was something. So while we were talking about that, we also said to be different and to be truly, everyone matters. It doesn't matter the size of your company, the size of your group, your industry, everyone matters. All geography in the county, all 88 cities matter. We said we're also going to do something different, that a handful of people aren't going to sit in a back room or in a room anywhere and decide what this giant business federation is going to stand for or do. We're going to be very grassroots. We're going to be out on the ground. We're going to really hear from everyone, and whether they take time to show up to one of these meetings or not. So there began our idea, and one of our founders is to my left, Mark Wilbur, I'm going to introduce in a minute. But we said, you know what, we have to poll. We have to get out to people and see what really matters to them to set our agenda. And so in December of 2007, before BizFed was anything, we didn't launch until January of 2008, we polled with Employers Group. And we did a survey, and we got, it was actually ended up being a direct replica of the market as a whole, like the size of employers, the geography, the industry sector, so it was very balanced. And from that, we got how we set our priorities. Because when we have 326,000 companies employing over 3 million people, how do you set priorities on what you're going to work on? So we use this polling to do just that. And so when we first came back that first year, number one was transportation, reduce commute time. 2, deal with urban crime and gang activity. And 3, improve and reform our K through 12 education system. Then when we stood on the steps of the Hall of Administration and we announced what this new business federation was going to stand for, those were not traditional business objectives. Though you didn't, they weren't the traditional things that you hear business owners advocating, screaming about, and getting in front of lawmakers about. Those were quality of life issues. Those were holistic community things. And everyone, what's happening there? Something's different. But that's what our people told us. Now, of course, we launched at the start of the worst recession in our entire lifetime, right? If you remember that. So here we are polling in December 7. We're launched in 08. Of course, no one knew it yet, right? We didn't know. That's officially when it started. But we didn't know till the fall, when the whole financial system was crumbling. So then things changed. And what we've done is every year since then, we've polled at the same time, the beginning of the year, after we know any elections that happened in November that changed gubernatorially or any of our mayors or the president. After we have closed, lots of people close on a fiscal year as a calendar year, so you know what your business performance was. Did you achieve your goals or not? The beginning of the year, we poll. We always ask the questions in the context of right now, of your operations right here in Southern California, and right now, this year, what are the most pressing issues? What's on your mind? And then every year now, we have done this poll. Now we benchmark ourselves. Now we have time and place. Now we know the ups and downs of economic conditions, the ups and downs of various elected officials, the ups and downs of business sectors that are growing or leaving, and so on. So today, this is the exciting part of our next session, is we just came out of the field. Actually, technically today we close. Technically today we're out of the field with the poll, but because of the timing of this, Mark Wilbur, who's the CEO of Employers Group, and Employers Group has been our polling arm since our beginning, has been consistent. They have an amazing team. They work on, Employers Group is a statewide association, been around 121 years. Serving the interests of manufacturers and business operations, but they work on employment law. They have 24/7 helpline to people for all your employment issues. So they're there on the front line hearing heart and soul of every size of company. So their polling arm is very interesting, and they've been very helpful. So Mark is going to come, and he's going to give you a sneak peek. We don't even technically release it to the media for like 10 more days because we got to figure out exactly all that it's saying. But he wanted to give you and is prepared to knock your socks off with what does this year say. And also in the context of what you just heard. In the nation and the state and so on. What are business owners saying? We did ask this year, not just generally, but we did ask specifically priorities around the federal administration, priorities around our state legislature, and then a couple of local items. He'll get to that. So after Mark presents the poll, then our one and only famous Dan Schnurr, who leads our Southern California Task Force, is going to do what he does best, is get into a deep dive conversation with a lot of smart people, a lot of diverse people around what you just heard from the poll, and he's going to do the so what, of course, and that's like super fun. So let me finish telling you real quick about Mark Wilbur, because it's so funny. You know people. Last night I was Speaker Anthony Rendon and his wife Annie Lamb were being honored at Cause. And last night, Speaker Rendon, because they were both being honored, husband and wife team, powerful team in the state, and he was quoting Andy Warhol, and he said, I'll mess it up, but something about, you don't want to stop seeing the people that are closest to you. So he was trying to compliment Annie, and he doesn't want to stop seeing her, and she's amazing and all these things. So Mark Wilbur's one of those guys I don't want to stop seeing just because he's been around since the beginning of time with BizFed. Literally, he bought when we decided to form, we said, well, we better buy our URL, we better buy BizFed, right? And we better buy, the name. He literally wrote the check, bought the URL before we were even anything. So, and then we had, it was great. So I don't want to stop seeing Mark. So those of you who know him, I want you to know a little bit about him real quick. Because he has, besides obviously being a founder, he was our past chair too. So he was our first operations chair. So in the early days when, we didn't have two nickels to rub together and somehow we were going to change the world. So he took on being the operations chair, which was a little crazy time. It was messy times, but he was brave. He was our chair a few years ago, so he led that. He was the chair of the institute where you're at today. But today, we don't ever let him go. He's our vice chair of our healthcare committee. He's chaired our operations, as I mentioned. And so before joining Employers Group, which, by the way, when he joined, he was the youngest CEO they'd ever had in all of their history. But the reason why they got him is that he was the associate dean at Marshall School of Business at USC. We got to go Trojans. I have to do that. I'm not a Trojan, but I got to do it, right? For 3 years. He also has been the coach of the USC hockey team for 11 years. I think the most winningest. How long?
That's how long we've been around, 20.
Oh my gosh, I said 11, 20. I'm close. He coaches hockey, which is great, super competitive, obviously. And while at USC, accepted the post of the Associate Dean of the Office of Corporate Programs. And then, of course, prior to USC, had a life as a consultant at Arthur Andersen. And I know we have lots of team CFO and other accountants in the room. And he worked on solutions throughout not only the US, but he was really big in Asia and Europe. And so the current Prime Minister of Japan is like a pal of his. Like, Abe, right? You guys are like drinking sake in the back room. So anyway, he...
I thought that was cool.
Did he really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Can you read that text to us?
So we love Mark. Mark's a big personality, as you can tell. He can't wait to get up here. But I got to finish. I got to go back to Dan real quick. So Dan Schnur, took on leading our Southern California task force starting in December. But he's also an infamous professor at the Annenberg School of Communications at USC. There we go again. Go fight Trojans, or go Trojans. Fight. What am I doing? Fight on. I go to all the games. I'm like, get it together, All right. Of course, though, what he does there is motivate students to become involved in politics, government, and public service. And he teaches, of course, the most popular classes in politics, communications, and leadership. But the reason why he can do that and why he's so popular is he's no stranger to polling and that work is he's also the founder and director of the USC Dorn's Life College and LA Times, yay, LA Times, we're in the building, poll. Do you guys remember that? And their poll was the only major poll in the United States that called the Trump outcome against great odds. And so Dan Schnur and his colleagues at LA Times took a lot of heat because there was a lot of heat around that big major. But he got it right, so that was exciting. Dan also, though, for years. Now, again, let's not forget to see Dan because everyone knows Dan, but let's remember, for years he was a political reformer, and he's had a lot of leadership positions. In 2010, he was appointed the chairman of the California Fair Political Practices Commission. After he completed his FPPC term, Dan registered as a non-party preference voter. Of course, remember, he ran for Secretary of State, only lost by a couple of votes to Alex Padilla, but, he gave it a go. But he also worked on fixing California, in the whole voter processes, dealing with a lot of campaign and political finance reform. And you might remember that he's one of California's political leading media strategists. He's worked for four presidential campaigns, 3 gubernatorial campaigns. He was the National Director of Communications for the 2000 presidential campaign for Senator John McCain. And you'll probably remember he spent 5 glorious years as the chief media spokesman for Governor Pete Wilson. And so he's no stranger to fire and flames and excitement in getting things done. So Mark's going to come up first and then Dan. So you're in for a treat. Bravo.
I am literally incapable of standing still, so it's just not possible. Wow, I don't even know what to do with an introduction like that. Thank you, Tracy. The truth is, we all know what keeps the machine running here at BizFed. Can we give it up for Tracy? We all just get to ride in her wake. So anyway, okay, so let's get my face off there. Thank you. All right, so we've been doing this for quite a while now for BizFed. It's actually a fun experience. If you're one of those people that actually enjoys looking at trending analysis and looking at data, you can get really lost in looking at the information that we get in this survey. It's very interesting, and you really do see some absolute trends as part of the process. Now, just keep in mind here, okay? This is an appetizer, okay? This is not the main course that comes in a couple weeks, right? So this is just an appetizer. So this is a walk through the health club. Don't start jumping onto machines yet, all right? We're just gonna get through this, and so you can get some snacks here, okay? So we did this very quickly this year. We really, we used to leave it open a lot longer, it just seemed to kind of go on forever. There's something about the urgency that we created around it this year that really made people respond. And it was fantastic. It's the highest response rate ever, and it closes out today, and I don't know, at 5 or whatever time it does, but that's fabulous. 737 responses, just fantastic. So, if you did this poll in this room, thank you. On behalf of BizFed and all the other businesses in this area, thank you. Because I know it takes time. And I also know that there's this one part of the survey that has been there for all these years, and that is the waiting question, where you have to wait between, which one's more important to you. So you're having to weigh between different priorities. But you'd be stunned at the kind of results we get from forcing people through that. So I think that sometimes adds a little time for people when they're doing it. The other thing I also like to notice CEOs and business owners. Business owners are essentially a CEO. So you have 47% of the respondents are the leaders of their organization. It's really tough getting a survey that is even out of the tens related to leaders. And that almost 50% of our respondents are all from senior leadership. So you really have a point of reference, I think, that really gives you support in what you're trying to communicate with the answers. So, whole bunch of organizations, 155 in total, representing literally tens of thousands of businesses. And these were our top 5. So, Torrance at 5th, West Hollywood, Harbor Trucking, Santa Clarita, and number 1, I believe for the 2nd or 3rd year in a row, LA Chamber. Can we have a big round of applause for these 5 organizations? And what EG does is we go out, if you've been able to corral 20 or more respondents from your organization, we actually go out and do a specific custom one just for that organization. So we did this last year, it was our first year, and we're gonna do it again this year. So we'll go out to, say, Torrance, and we'll literally provide them a custom one. So it's kind of interesting, because then you have the total BizFed, and then you also have your own constituents, and you can really kind of see some variance between what maybe your own constituents might think are important versus what the overall BizFed organization sees. And you can imagine that'd be pretty valuable. Okay, early analysis of the top priorities. Taxes and fees has been number 1 for several years now. Hasn't moved, still there, and I really don't see it changing. I mean, this recent gas tax isn't gonna help. So, these constant taxes are, the one thing I have to tell you, the former mayor that was in here used a word, and it literally took the wind out of my sails and calmed me. Because it's the first politician I've heard use the term balance. I'm so sick of I'm all this way or I'm all that way, and if you're not all that way or all that way, you must be an idiot. And there's no balance. And so there has to be some compromise. One of the things I'm sure it's going to come up when you start looking through this and the Trump stuff, he didn't need 1 electoral vote of our state, not 1. And 34 cents, I think, was the last number I saw. 34 cents of every dollar of our state budget comes from the federal government. There's got to be some balance in working with them. You know, you can saber rattle so far, but they already showed they didn't need a single electoral vote, and that's of concern, because that means they can do whatever they want. Our vote doesn't matter right now to them. Didn't even visit the state during the presidential election run. Didn't even visit. Only visited once during the primaries and went to Orange County for about 4 minutes. That's it. So I'm not saying it's, you know, this isn't a political grandstand, nothing like that. It's an observation. It's an objective observation. So if we lose those federal dollars, where are we going to make that up? More taxes? Our state can't take anymore. And we're already hearing from business leaders that taxes and fees are number one. And then the government regulation, compliance, you know, you can hear the CEQA comments and all those things. Again, top of the food chain here. Our public infrastructure, not a big surprise. Hopefully this has helped a little bit with some of the passing of this tax. I'm not sure. Transportation is interesting because it dropped a little bit. And I wonder how much, I wished we'd had a trailing question here that, did Measure M impact your vote here? Because I'm thinking, you know, if it did, it might have dropped it down, it might have, which would make sense, actually. Legislative gridlock. Come on. It has to wake up, like it wakes up, it turns red. Yes. Yeah. Oops. I'm sure trust me. There we go.
Roads, bridges, waterways,
Etc.
are kind of transportation.
Right, they are.
So I think those two give us a little gray there.
Yeah, they do. I think, at least for me, when this question, because it's been the same description for years, is the public infrastructure of the physical bridges and plant and the investment from the state to fix those things. So it's not the transportation system of the buses, the trains, the subways, you know, how it all connects together, like why doesn't my green line get to the airport? And, you know, those kinds of things. So I think that's, yeah. But we could actually, you know, maybe do something around that and see if we can tighten that up a little bit. Come on. There we are. Oh, you want to add them together? I got you. Most excellent. Michael Lewis, my favorite person in the room, I swear. Okay, Trump administration. So these are the stated, you know, project areas. And so we asked which ones of the president's priorities that they articulated are going to drive jobs. Which ones do you think are really going to drive jobs? What I think is interesting here is, you know, similar to what you asked, and I mentioned this the other day when I introduced this, was energy was down here at 22%. And I look at energy as like an infrastructure project to me, because I usually picture those as, you know, giant dams or, you know, big investments, you know, that are multi-billion dollars and thousands of jobs associated with them. So, but maybe this goes back to the Gray Davis thing where we kind of solved some of the grid issues and worked past that, and maybe they stepped that down. It's interesting how people's perception, we're in a state that has some of the highest taxes in the country, bar none. And yet we're looking at taxes, a tax cut which would drive jobs. So people are interested in that and state that that's going to be driving jobs, and yet we just had a giant tax increase on a user tax. So we have some conflicting points of view going on with this subject area, which I think is interesting. Again, this is like snack. It's like the appetizer. The meal's coming later. Yep. There we go. Okay. Let you absorb this one for just a second. This is a big issue. I remember when I was chair, GoBiz had just been created. You remember this, Tracy? And the guy came down and literally, no, and Toyota, I think it was that year, had announced that they were leaving the state and going to Texas. Literally looked at our board and said, no, there's no companies leaving the state of California. I'm like, wait a minute, you ought to just get out and go get in your car and drive down to Torrance and go see if you can find anybody left at Toyota, because they're already left the building. And now recently Nestle this year and things like that. Here's the problem. I got in a discussion about this up in Sacramento, and they talk about, because we are a job creator in the sense of new business. Like, we incubate when we're just incubating. We have incubators that create incubators. Like, we are always starting up jobs from an entrepreneurial standpoint. But a manager at a 5-person startup is dramatically different than a manager at Nestle. Because there's downstream services and jobs that feed off of those deep, long-term invested corporate citizens, that those jobs extend into way more jobs. But a manager at a startup, they're not going for training. They're not, they're only buying infrastructure things to help that small company and maybe bringing on another new person when they can afford it. So we incubate like crazy, but we always struggle in the sense of we give up these massive big jobs that have such an economic impact to us for these startup jobs, which, look, I love. I don't want them to go away. But gosh, why can't we keep them both? So the regulatory environment, these, again, look, don't shoot the messenger. I didn't fill out everybody's survey, okay? So, but you look at the taxes and the regulatory environment, at what point do we finally stop hitting our head against the wall and say, gosh, we need to maybe find some balance? I got to tell you, I was so pleased to hear that term. That is the first person I've heard use that term in months. Kind of want to run up and give them a hug. So traffic congestion, still an issue. I mean, we love our LA traffic. And there was, okay, so this is what I think is interesting. So lack of skilled workforce, new in 2017. Okay, so this is interesting because I sit on the board of directors of NAM back in Washington, D.C., and they started this whole institute on trying to create jobs, because if you think about it, my dad's dad or people like that working in manufacturing plants back 40, 50, 60 years ago, they were low-tech jobs. Almost every manufacturing job today is a high-tech job. Like, you're running computers, screens, you're dealing with software, you're dealing with a lot of things that need a complete different job strength, job capability. And so companies are investing as fast as they can. And I'm just saying is that maybe we ought to put some incentives, like we used to do for real estate development. Maybe we put some incentives in here further to encourage companies to maybe invest in some skilled labor so that we can actually fulfill these jobs, and we're not fighting on trying to bring people in. We actually have people here that are unemployed that actually could have these jobs. Just food for thought. So that's the big deal. We're going to go through this next process. I mean, Tracy kind of gave you a hint as to where this thing is headed. There'll be, big announcements of this thing. And now I get to turn it over to the illustrious Mr. Dan Schnurr. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks so much for being here.